News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
KBNU News Time is 4:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Roof Rescue. Since the start of the pandemic, Utah has documented 715,996 positive coronavirus cases. That includes another one-day record of 9,813 new cases reported statewide since Monday by the Utah Department of Health. It's the third day recently that has surpassed 9,000 cases. The new report includes 344 new cases in Cache, Box Elder, and Rich counties. The total northern Utah case count has reached 38,707, while 1,735 in the district have been hospitalized during the pandemic. Since Monday, 15 more Utahns died of COVID-19. Utah's death count for the entire pandemic stands at 3,922. There have been 197 coronavirus deaths in the three northern Utah counties of Cache, Rich, and Box Elder. These larger-than-ever daily case count reports have driven Utah's rolling 7-day average of new cases to 8,524 a day, the highest since the start of the pandemic. Today's report indicates 579 Utahns are currently hospitalized with coronavirus, which is 38 more than reported on Monday. Also, 178 of those patients are in intensive care, which is actually 4 fewer than Monday. Since the start of the pandemic, Utah's total COVID hospitalizations has reached 28,593. KBNU News Time is 4:07. KBNU weather for tonight. More of the same, partly cloudy to mostly cloudy, a little bit hazy and patchy fog after midnight, low 10 to 15. And then partly sunny tomorrow, patchy fog in the morning, some hazy sunshine, upper 20s for the high. And that's kind of the pattern for the next several days, clear on through the weekend. Right now we have 25 at KBNU. KBNU weather is brought to you by Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology, Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aid technology. Call Dr. Paul Daines at 753-HEAR or visit cachehearing.com.
If you think it's expensive to hire a professional, just wait until you hire an amateur.
Why the heck is the roof leaking? Larry, you said you got it fixed.
I thought it was fixed, Donna. Everything was fine until it started raining.
Larry, that's the point of fixing the roof, is so we can actually live here when it's stormy outside.
This is David with Roof Rescue. Our experienced roofing team is tried and true and will fix your roof guaranteed. Visit roofrescueusa.com to schedule your free roof inspection. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind.
KBNU News Time is 4:08. The Aggie Creamery, the makers of famous Aggie ice cream, is celebrating quite a milestone this year, 100 years. On KBNU's For the People program on Monday, Department Head of USU's Nutrition and Food Sciences Department, Heidi Wengren, was our guest. Aggie ice cream is unique in that it's a food product that people love that is born out of university scientific research.
Yeah, that's right. We have food scientists, dairy scientists working here in our department, and they're the formulators of our ice cream. They're the ones that figure out, what kind of ratios of protein and sugar and fat need to be included to make our ice cream really stand out.
Wengren said it all started back in the day because there was a dairy on campus and scientists who knew how to make ice cream. They realized it could really be a great opportunity to train students to become food scientists who would then take what they were learning about dairy and ice cream to the industry and help that industry grow. To help celebrate the centennial, they will have some retro flavors, current favorite flavors, and even new flavors during the year.
We'll also have kind of a theme of the month, and then we will be doing giveaways that go along with that theme. So you can look to social media for some additional details, but for example, in January, we'll be giving out ski passes to Beaver Mountain. And our flavor of the month for January is birthday because the kind of the kickoff and the actual, beginning of Aggie Ice Cream occurred in January.
And for the people, we'll have monthly updates throughout the year on the different events in connection with the centennial celebration of Aggie Ice Cream. A former Arizona politician in prison for running an illegal adoption scheme in 3 states involving women from the Marshall Islands has lost an appeal of one of his sentences. The 8th Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a 6-year sentence given in Arkansas to Paul Peterson, a Republican who served as Metro Phoenix's assessor for 6 years and also worked as an adoption attorney. Prosecutors said Peterson illegally paid women to come to the U.S. to give up their babies in at least 70 adoption cases in Utah, Arizona, and Arkansas. In all, Peterson was sentenced to 11 years in prison in Arizona and Arkansas. He was also convicted in Utah. KVNU News Time is 4:11. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
When news breaks, we break in. News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
I'm Larry Gelwicks, the getaway guru for Morris Columbus Travel and Delta Vacations. Run away to the sunny beaches of Hawaii, Mexico, and the Caribbean with double discounts. You get a guaranteed air and hotel discount. Then we take that already discounted rate and drop it up to an additional $350 per booking. For the best travel deals on the planet, call Morris Columbus Travel.
Come on and get away, Morris Columbus.
Coming up on the Wednesday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, Senator Kelly Loeffler of Georgia joining us to talk about the voting rights push from the Democrats and why was it that we had Biden visiting, but Stacey Abrams MIA from that. Plus, Clay, what do you got?
COVID hospitalizations, Buck, hit a new high. What is that telling us? What will the spin be from the White House, and what will the fallout be from all Dr. Fauci's testimony? We'll discuss that more. It'll be the Clay and Buck Show. Come on.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM. For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cache Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have 2 guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People, hour 1 of today's show. I'm Jason Williams. Bill Walter here in the studio with us as well. And we have a lot to get to, so we're going to jump right into it today before the clock ticks any further along. Listeners last week sent us a bunch of photos, and it caught my attention so much so I had to go check it out myself. I've shared some of the photos sent by listeners and that I took on my own to our Facebook page of an ice event of sorts that took place during that very rapid melt last week along the Blacksmith Fork River. To try and describe this really doesn't do justice, so you really need to check out the photos on our Facebook page, but I'll do my best here. It looked like a 5 to 6 foot wall of ice on each bank of the river along most of the river, at least towards the lower end near the mouth of the canyon. And that wall of ice wasn't there the day before. It was maybe 6 inches of snow with dog tracks right down to the water everywhere. It's a popular trail there along the Blacksmith Fork River Trail. This wall of ice just there one morning. What happened? What causes this? It's everyone sending photos in wanted to know. So we reached out to our friends at the Utah State University College of Natural Resources Watershed Science Department. And joining us right now, Department Head there at USU Watershed Sciences, Dr. Patrick Belmont. And Dr. Belmont, appreciate taking some time for KVNU today. As I said, I can't really do it justice describing it here. It is kind of a stunning thing to see, especially when it just wasn't there the night before. But I also should mention this. There is one portion of the river where it looks like a 6-inch block of ice about the size of a Volkswagen has actually been pushed up out of the river onto the land. What took place?
Yep, water is powerful stuff, and rivers are really messy systems. So this is a really cool thing to see lots of people having observed this and saying, that's just not something I've seen before. That seems out of place. That's one of the things I love about working on rivers is they're constantly changing. They're constantly surprising us. They're full of cool things.
Sure.
So in this case, to the best of what I can tell has happened here is probably an ice jam further up on the Blacksmith Fork broke, and that would have sent a big rush of water downstream. And that's how the big ice blocks end up getting deposited. And the ice kind of pushes itself up onto the banks, and it looks like a beautiful mess, as you saw.
Sure.
But this happens fairly commonly on a lot of rivers. It may not have been very common on Blacksmith Fork, but we see it quite a bit in lots of other rivers.
Really?
Yeah. I did a lot of work out in Minnesota where, the rivers freeze all the way over for a good portion of the winter. And we see this kind of phenomenon quite a bit.
It's fascinating, and Dr. Belmont, it's awe-inspiring to an extent. I like many of our listeners, I've been around this river and the Logan River as well my entire life. It's you get to know them as sort of these lazy rivers. They're very shallow. Spent a lot of time in the water myself as a kid, tubing, things like that. And here you have this event that's taken place that really just rams home the power of the river. This these ice chunks have taken down trees. They've rearranged some of the banks. Does this permanently change a river every season in a lot of areas?
Well, certainly water is incredibly powerful. I've been in some sketchy situations in some cases in rivers where I got on the wrong side of a tree, and it is unbelievably powerful. But this is a fairly common phenomenon in a lot of rivers. The work that it does is it'll move the banks around a little bit. It'll move some of the gravel and bars around, things like that, and then it can do some damage on the trees and things that are alongside the river. But generally speaking, the rivers are adjusted to deal with these types of events. They have a couple of small negative impacts, but generally speaking, it's certainly still a sign of a healthy river. A healthy river is a messy river.
Sure. That's it also made me think of, as many things in nature, everything being connected and part of a natural process, and the health of the river being the hopefully the end result of that. This also had a cleaning effect. Through the summer at some point, I don't know who, but someone had built a large rock dam of sorts in the river there, where a popular area to recreate and camp is along the Blacksmith Fork River. Gone. Just complete. I mean, there is not a sign of this little man-made waterfall that was there all summer long. It's just pushed down. This is a clean and open river with no obstructions. That's good for the river, right?
It is. Yeah, rivers have to kind of continually reinvent themselves, and that's how they create all this great fish habitat that we're known for out here in Utah. They need to be kind of messy, and they need to have events like this, disturbances like this occur.
Sure.
Any beaver dams that were in that reach probably were taken out as well, and there's some beavers out there thinking they're going to have to rebuild.
Start over.
That's okay, too. They're used to it.
This is, our rivers have been on our minds a lot the last year plus with the significant drought last year, and fingers crossed we don't have that again this year, but it's still a possibility even with snowpack where it's at. How are our rivers doing overall while we've got you here?
They're doing okay. You're right that our snowpack is pretty high. It's above average conditions. But we're still not out of the drought. We're actually still in what is considered a severe drought condition right now. We're going to need a lot more snow yet this winter to pull ourselves out of that drought.
Sure.
We're still a ways off that. The rivers are doing okay right now, but I'm not going to hold my breath for
could change.
What's going to happen the rest of the winter. Who knows?
Can change quickly, right?
It can, indeed. Yeah.
Weather in Utah, always unpredictable. For listeners, if you'd like to... Sorry, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, so many of our reservoirs are so low right now. A lot of them are down around 25 and 30% full. And so it's going to take a whole lot of several years of good snow to refill those.
Wow, it just puts it all in perspective. Like this ice event, it's great to appreciate and recreate along all of our waterways, our lakes, our rivers, and all of that. But it's nice occasionally to have a reminder that we should also have respect for them, not only in how we treat them and care for them, but also remembering that, as Dr. Belmont said at the beginning here, there's a lot of power behind these things. For listeners, again, check these photos out. And again, this was 6 inches of snow, maybe, at most, right down to the water line all along this river the day before. Next day, after this ice event, 6-foot wall of ice that had been cut sheer by the water, lining both banks all along the mouth area of the river there. Just an impressive thing to see on the Blacksmith Fork there. And we've got a lot of photos our listeners sent in, and some I took on my own, posted to our Facebook page. Our guest again has been Dr. Patrick Belmont of the Watershed Sciences School there. He's the department head there at the College of Natural Resources at Utah State University. And if you're interested in this type of thing, please check out some of the research they're doing. They have an amazing set of visualizations, a lot of information through the extension program, and more about our waterways and more. And this is what they do. Please check it out. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. Thanks again to you, Dr. Patrick Belmont, Department Head of USU Watershed Sciences, for joining us today and helping us explain this weird thing that happened.
Thanks so much for covering this, Jason.
Thank you for joining us. And for listeners, thank you as well. Stay tuned. We'll have more of For the People right after this.
UNI Furniture is excited to be going back to the furniture market in Las Vegas. After taking the last couple of years off, the furniture market is back on, and UNI is expecting to buy lots of inventory direct from the manufacturers. So in anticipation, UNI has gotten aggressive with their in-store discounts during their January clearance. Sofas, loves, chairs, sectionals, dining room, bedroom, and mattresses are all on sale. This January clearance features discounts on all home decor and accents too. It all adds up to just another reason there's always a better buy at UNI Furniture, downtown Logan.
It's John and Emily with Zero Res. If you've been putting off getting your carpets cleaned, there's no better time to call than now.
Call today and get on the schedule in January and get a 4th room clean for free when you mention the station.
This sale only happens once a year, so call now, 435-554-1050, or schedule online and use promo code FREEROOM.
That's 435-554-1050. Zero Res. Backwards or forwards, it's the right way to clean.
These are the sounds of a dinner that almost didn't happen. A dinner now served, thanks to people like you. Due to COVID-19, 17 million more Americans may face hunger. Feeding America is helping our neighbors in need. And if you're able, you can too. Donations are being accepted at feedingamerica.org/coronavirus. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
My Shiro doesn't always wear a cape, but she always has time for a hug, a smile, for going the extra mile. My Shiro stretches every dollar, puts in long hours, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. When you're ready to retire, we want you to be able to enjoy it. Get free tips to help boost your retirement savings now at aceyourretirement.org/Shiro.
A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Spending some time this hour recapping today's first ever Great Salt Lake Summit. This was hosted and organized by Republican lawmaker from Kaysville and Speaker of the Utah House of Representatives, Brad Wilson. The first ever summit included scientists from universities here in Utah, USU, U of U, BYU, but also some from out of state. Lawmakers, part of the panel discussion today, environmental groups, industry leaders from the brine, shrimp, and mineral extraction industries that basically depend entirely on the Great Salt Lake. Representative of the ski industry on hand as well, speaking today about their concern with the loss of lake effect snow and the way that could greatly shorten the ski season here in Utah should the Great Salt Lake basically get any smaller than it already is. They said they're already seeing an impact from this. And, of course, as I've mentioned, concern with the dust in the air from more exposed lake bed. which, in addition to adding more toxic dust to the air for us to breathe, also then settles on snow in the mountains and makes it melt faster, meaning the snowpack depletes sooner than it normally would if that dust is really heavy. So Speaker of the House Brad Wilson said he had invited these individuals from this Owens Lake Restoration Project to speak during the panel today because he felt like it was a good warning for the state of Utah, what could happen here, how much it could cost in the future as opposed to now, to the difference between saving the lake and trying to completely rebuild the lake, which is what they basically had to do with Owens Lake, which is on the eastern slope of the Sierra Nevadas there in California. It's just about 5 miles south of Lone Pine, California, where Owens Lake is located. And at one point, Owens Lake disappeared. It disappeared almost entirely because of agricultural water use and a lack of concern for the future of the lake. And then it just was gone. And once it was gone, the quality of life in the surrounding area was that very year immediately impacted. Here's just a bit from, again, these were members of the team that worked on the Owens Lake restoration. After the lake disappeared, the very next event was a big windstorm, and the dust hung in the air for weeks. Scientists did some air quality monitoring and basically told everyone in surrounding towns, you need to leave for a while. Here's just a bit from two presenters from the Owens Lake Restoration Project in California speaking at the Great Salt Lake Summit today.
Accounts, from newspapers from the early to mid 1900s, speak of extreme, dust events in the area. At some point, the EPA got involved, and mandated the city of Los Angeles to control dust at Owens Lake. So the main focus for us is controlling PM10. PM10 stands for particulate matter. Is particulate matter 10 microns in size or less. And just to give you an idea of the size, it's roughly 5 to 7 times the size of a human hair.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we control dust at Owens Lake through the use of best available control measures, which is a regulatory term, an approved dust control method. And I'll start off with the most water intensive method, known as shallow flood laterals or shallow flood ponds. And it is exactly that. We just take raw water from the Owens Valley, create a big bathtub by constructing parameter berms or roads and filling up that pond, and we get a nice level pond out there. We got creative a few years ago. We started using shallow flood sprinklers. However, there's some issues there because the satellite imagery that is used for compliance at times does not pick up the moist soil. And although we know that moist soil is not emissive, it was not hitting the mark, so we have to over wet. I'm going to be talking about these methods from most water intensive to least water intensive. Again, with shallow flood laterals, the capital cost, the initial capital cost is about $26 million per square mile. And water use is about 3.1 acre feet per every acre of pond that we have out there to keep up with the evaporative demand. And there is habitat value, obviously. There's low maintenance with these ponds. The capital cost of sprinkler shallow flood is about $32 million per square mile. And that's because we have a lot of sprinkler heads out there that we need to install, a lot more piping, a lot more water filtration to avoid clogging of those sprinkler heads. Water use is about 2.6 acre feet per acre, which is, I would expect a lot more water savings, but because of that satellite imagery issue that I mentioned, you have to overwater. Habitat value, it doesn't have any habitat value. The birds get scared away with the sprinklers, and it is more maintenance for our guys out there. We have managed vegetation, which is similar in infrastructure to the sprinkler shallow flood, but we have to drain all of the salts out of the soil You have to cleanse that out for months and months and months until we get to the right concentration, and it allows for native species to grow out there. We use a lot of salt grass. It's the most tolerant to salt. Another dust control method is brine with shallow flood backup. And it's backup because brine is considered a subsidiary of shallow flood. It happens through the accumulation of salts in the lowest gradient areas of shallow flood ponds. Because this is a salt lake, we identified this trend. And once the concentration gets high enough, you start to see crystallization of those salts, and red and orange colors, really beautiful due to the bacteria that's in there. Capital cost for managed veg, probably the highest, $36 million per square mile. It does use water initially at a very high rate, 2.6 acre feet per acre until establishment occurs. Habitat value, yes, there is habitat value, however, it's high maintenance. Brine has a capital cost of about $24 million. It's the initial shallow flood cost. But once the brine establishes and hardens, there's zero water use. It's pretty much set it and forget it. However, there is no habitat value except for if you introduce some fresh water on the shorelines.
That, again, just a clip from today's Great Salt Lake Summit. Presenters from California talking about the restoration efforts for their salt lake, Owens Lake, on the eastern slope of the Sierra Nevadas there, just outside of Lone Pine, California. The costs, if you weren't doing the math there really quickly, well, the Speaker of the House did. He was taking notes. When the presentation was done, he said, okay, so if the Great Salt Lake does get too low and the toxic dust in the air, the dust settling on snowpack and melting it faster, the overall effect on air quality, on our environment in general, could be mitigated with anti-dust efforts such as those underway right now around Owens Lake in California. But the Speaker of the House had taken some quick notes, and he said, you realize you're talking about initial capital costs, construction of these dust mitigation projects of roughly $1.5 billion, and then an ongoing operational cost of roughly $400 to $500 million a year. The Speaker of the House was quick to point out that is not within the parameters of the Utah state budget. Another way to put that, we can't afford that. And I think that's why the Speaker of the House probably asked these folks to come and talk today, to lay it out in stark form how much it will cost the state of Utah to mitigate the effects of a disappearing or disappeared Great Salt Lake as opposed to protecting the lake now. More highlights from today's Great Salt Lake Summit after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News brought to you by the Duck Hunter. Hiram City has been working on a park for some 20 years, and it's shaping up to be one of the premier open outside play spaces in Cache Valley. The new Blacksmith Fork Park, located east of Mountain Crest High School, has been in the making for over 2 decades. The park will not only have plenty of green space for children and families, it has different amenities to keep people outside for hours. Hiram's mayor and city council have bought into the concept that healthy communities have nice parks. Ron Salveson, the Hiram city manager, said the city purchased the ground a long time ago. It's just under 30 acres, and it has a wide variety of things that will give people something to do. The park has 2 Pony League fenced baseball fields, 2 pickleball courts, and 2 to 4 more to be added in the next 2 months, depending on the budget. The park already has plans for a sledding hill, splash pad, dog park, 2 playgrounds, and 1 sand volleyball pit. Salveson said there will be a basketball court, a big amphitheater, and 21,000 square foot skateboard park. The lion's share of the construction started about 7 years ago. There are 3 pavilions, several restroom facilities, and a walking trail that will hook into the Blacksmith Fork Canyon Trail. 2 stranded skiers were rescued from Mount Olympus over the weekend by search and rescue. Officials say the Salt Lake County search and rescue team was called out at about 7:40 p.m. Sunday. to the 2 skiers on the west slabs. Rescuers noted that the skiers were in good health and spirits, but were experiencing a few different issues. They said the skiers were having some technical issues with their gear and were no longer moving downwards because the mountainside they were in had frozen due to lack of sunlight and dropping temperatures. Search and rescue teams said they brought food, warmth, rope gear, and technical snow equipment to assist themselves and the skiers. Everyone was off the mountain by 1 a.m. And Governor Cox exempted from a mask mandate the Utah Capitol and other state facilities Monday as conservative lawmakers prepared to begin meeting for the year. But the Salt Lake County mayor is pushing back. Democratic Mayor Jenny Wilson says Cox does not have the authority to create exemptions from the 30-day order issued as the Omicron variant powers a punishing surge of the coronavirus. Cox stood by the guidance emailed by his office, which says masks are encouraged but not required in most state facilities. He said local government rules do not cover state buildings. KVNU weather brought to you by Polylift Concrete Raising and Piering, the foundation lifting experts. Visit poly-lift.com to schedule your free assessment or call or text 435-999-9309. Polylift is locally owned and operated. Partly cloudy, then mostly cloudy tonight. Hazy conditions, patchy fog after midnight, low 10 to 15. And then partly cloudy, some patchy morning fog on Wednesday. High temperature in the upper 20s. It was 28 today. It's 25 right now. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com. We'll check Wall Street from Edward Jones next.
Does your home have that stuffy winter smell? John at the Duct Hunter says it could be your air ducts holding on to dust and other surprises. To get rid of that smell, give John a call at the Duct Hunter. He'll thoroughly clean each duct in every room. Not with a shop vac, but with forced air and a vacuum that'll make your mom proud. He can even run a camera through your vents to see what's going on. For a free consultation, call the Duct Hunter at 770-4813.
We are the Duck Hunter. Breathe better, save money, protect your home. We are the Duck Hunter.
This is Cheryl bringing you the daily financial market report on behalf of Jeff Olson and Edward Jones. U.S. equities rebounded nicely once again today, with all 3 major indexes ending in the green. The tech-heavy NASDAQ led gains, up about 1.4% on the day. We saw leadership from sectors like energy, technology, and materials today. This came as a 10-year Treasury yield fell to 1.74%. after a sharp rise since the beginning of this year. Meanwhile, oil prices continue to climb, with WTI crude up nearly 4%, supporting a stronger energy sector overall. U.S. equities closed higher today. The Dow closed up 183 points at 36,252. The NASDAQ closed up 211 points at 15,153. The S&P 500 closed up 43 points at 4,713. In stocks of local interest, Nucor was down 1.02 to 110.84. Thermo Fisher was down 4.54 to 620.50. Wells Fargo was up 0.71 to 56.06. Chevron was up 2.86 to 127.97. Apple was up 2.89 to 175.08. Walt Disney was up 1.29 to 157.89. Autoliv was up 0.85 to 107.14. Zions was up 0.66 to 70.22. Amazon was up 77.52 to 3,307.24. This has been today's financial market report, brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC, and Jeff Olson, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial advice at 580 North Main in Logan. If you would like additional information, please contact our branch office at 435-787-8170. Daily commentary is also located on our website at edwardjones.com.
Dr. Josh Red, chiropractic physician, explains how Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
A lot of our patients end up having autoimmune conditions. This is where their immune system, rather than attacking bacteria, a virus, or other bad things, it starts to attack their own tissue. This can cause so many different issues and symptoms throughout the whole body. The biggest thing for us at Red River is to identify what's causing the autoimmune response to flare up. This could be intestinal problems, blood sugar imbalances, cortisol defects, hormonal imbalances, along with something as simple as dietary triggers and environmental triggers. One of the most common causes, too, when you have an autoimmune condition is you'll have inflammation throughout the whole body. Not every patient will have the same imbalances or the same triggers, and so we have to customize a very personalized treatment plan in order for these patients to feel better.
Schedule your appointment today at 855-55-RIVER. Red River Health and Wellness with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Call Red River today.
Hi, I'm news correspondent Bob Woodruff. In 2006, a roadside bomb struck the armored vehicle I was riding in while reporting from Iraq. I sustained a life-threatening traumatic brain injury. The military term "got your six" means I have your back, and that day our service members had mine. During my recovery, I learned firsthand the challenges facing our service members who return home with injuries. While serving, their fellow service members always had their six. Now that they're home, it is our turn. We started the Bob Woodruff Foundation to make sure that the camaraderie and support they relied on in the military carries on, and we need you. Please join us as part of the Got Your Six initiative and help us be there for impacted veteran service members and their families. They've had our backs. It's time we have theirs. Learn more at gotyoursix.org. That's gotyoursix.org, using the number 6.
Learning your child has cancer causes an emotional and financial crisis. Often, the best place for treatment is far from home. But with the help of the National Children's Cancer Society, children battling cancer can get to life-saving treatment, whether it's across town or across the country. To learn how we give families hope and give their children the best shot at survival, visit thenccs.org. That's THENCCS.org. Because no family should go through childhood cancer alone.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Continuing on with highlights from today's first ever Great Salt Lake Summit. This is a fascinating look at policy options around drought and depleted Great Salt Lake, the effects on the environment, the effects on industry, from mineral extraction and brine shrimp to the ski industry, seeing a decline in snowpack for our water supply as dust from the exposed lake bed makes its way to the mountains, melts the snowpack faster. All these things were discussed today. Before the news there, we had some highlights of two gentlemen from California who presented on restoration of Owens Lake. It's on the east side of the Sierra Nevada range, about 5 miles from Lone Pine, California. And Owens Lake was so abused and overused that eventually, as climate change and drought became more the norm in the area, eventually the lake just never happened. It not only didn't fill back up each year, it just stopped being there. The ground got so dry around the lake from such low water levels that eventually the runoff that filled the lake each year or contributed to the lake each year just went into the ground. Just enough to saturate it and turn some parts into squishy mud, but no actual water to be seen. Then the dust storms began, and the dust storms were so bad, towns had to be evacuated in the 1950s during certain sustained wind events because the particulate matter in the air was not only so thick, but so toxic from that exposed lake bed. That, of course, then it had a noticeable effect on melting snowpack. So then all of a sudden the snowpack was melting off fast. Basically, everything that has been predicted for the potential future of Utah, if we lose the Great Salt Lake, happened. And so in the 1950s, a restoration effort was begun, and it continues to today. We started off with a clip showing you the dollar amounts on this. That was really what caught lawmakers' eyes today during the summit, because we're talking $1.something billion in capital, in one-time capital costs to get restoration projects up and running, and then between $450 and $600 million a year to keep them running. That's basically what's costing the state of California and the counties and cities in the area to try and mitigate the effects of overusing and eventually draining this lake. And that's what we're doing, Speaker Wilson said, to the Great Salt Lake. And that's not even including, he said, the effect it could have on the overall environment with the loss of the migratory birds. Migratory birds play a huge role in what makes northern Utah fertile and a good place to grow certain crops. Without them, certain pests that like it here are going to become a huge problem. And migratory bird routes shift all the time when water supplies are depleted here or there. So these are all very realistic possibilities, the speaker said, and they're hoping that these mitigation efforts can be avoided. But what they're really hoping is that they'd be able to stop some of this before it even begins. So here's just a little bit from Tage Flint. This is a man who manages the Weber Basin Water Conservancy District, and he said they've been talking about this for years. He's just happy lawmakers are now paying attention.
I have told many of my colleagues for many years now that I firmly believe this, that the Great Salt Lake is going to drive water policy in northern Utah going forward. And what I add to that statement is that it should, and that protection of the lake should come at a higher priority than it has been done in the past. I often reflect on the fact that when I started my career in water purveyance some 36 years ago, the lake was regarded as something of a depository for water that could not be used any other way, and that if good water, pure water, was able to make its way to the lake, then maybe it was a bad idea. And nowadays, I think not only mine but the public sentiment and certainly our leaders' sentiment has changed to the point where we now understand the importance of that lake staying healthy, and that water should get to the lake at a reasonable pace.
Flint said that one of the challenges they faced with the Weber Water Conservancy District, and this is also a challenge that they face with the Cache Water Conservation District, is growth is happening. So there are these tensions, Flint described, between something like this that they're trying to highlight today with this summit. What could happen if we lose the Great Salt Lake, or even if we let it deplete to a certain point? The cost to the state to mitigate dust and to rescue these industries that will then leave Utah, or sorry, not rescue the industries, but rescue the economy when these industries leave Utah. Imagine Utah without a ski industry. Imagine Utah without mineral extraction and brine shrimp. It's millions of dollars a year in economic activity, with a ripple effect of a lot of businesses that wouldn't exist if those industries didn't exist. Restaurants, coffee shops, things like that. So this is scary, obviously. But Flint said, and he's glad that the Speaker of the House, a member of leadership in the Republican majority, is bringing this to the forefront. Finally, Flint said he felt that lawmakers had kind of just ignored their warnings from water districts and environmental groups and water managers even throughout the state for years have been saying, we've got a problem. We're taking too much water out of the Great Salt Lake, or we're taking too much water out upstream before it even gets to the Great Salt Lake. And that's going to be bad. Now, Flint says, everyone's accepted the reality. It is bad. It's going to get worse if we don't do something, Flint said. But he was careful to add this on, because he said he doesn't feel that the right approach is an approach that means a complete moratorium on all water development projects to account for the coming population explosion here in Utah.
Another trap that we may fall into is being fooled into thinking that all water development in the future is going to be detrimental to the lake and to the state in general. I already mentioned the population growth that we're going to experience here, and I think it comes with a responsibility to being sure that there's a drinking water supply for each of them, and to a certain extent an irrigation water supply for them as well. And to think that all water development should stop at this point seems to be folly. What we need to do is do it responsibly and mitigate anything we do going forward so that the lake does not receive more detriment effects. And in essence, we mitigate anything we do from here on out as it pertains to the Great Salt Lake.
And finally, Flint said, speaking in his capacity as a member of the Weber Water Conservation District, Mr. Flint said, it's time for people to get realistic about their water use, and that's going to require not only an end to certain subsidies for water rates, which he argued of biggest contributor to why St. George in the data appears to be one of the biggest water abusers. They also have the lowest water rates in the state, and he said that just encourages people to not be smart about their water use. So he said it's time to change that, but he said it needs to go even a step further.
We feel that it's time to do statewide secondary water metering such that there's accountability for all users for all water that they're using in their household, whether that's out in the yard or inside the house. All should be accountable, and we all ought to be aware of how much we're using and how we could do better. It's very difficult to promote water conservation philosophies and tips to our users if they simply cannot see the difference in their usage. It's a simple matter of an informed customer is going to be a more responsible customer. We feel like it's time that we spend the $300 million at least in metering secondary connections throughout the state of Utah.
Flint said that the data here in Utah shows more than half of secondary water connections are in Davis and Weber County alone, with Cache County and Utah County following up second and third places. He said secondary water metering would go a long way to making people realize how much they're using, even if it wasn't associated with additional costs on their monthly bill. He said it could be an awareness issue. And then if that doesn't work, maybe at that point it starts costing you a little extra if you're a water abuser or a heavy user at least. That is going to be interesting to see. Other discussions that happened today involved being more smart about agriculture, not only the equipment we're using and how we're watering, but what crops we're growing. One panelist actually suggested that it might be time for the state to start incentivizing growers here in Utah to move away from very water-intense crops like alfalfa. Lawmakers were receptive to the idea, but had a lot of questions about how such an incentive would work. What are they going to grow instead? Obviously, alfalfa can be grown elsewhere in wetter areas of the country, but then it has to be imported. But more importantly, lawmakers said, how would they incentivize farmers to make that change if they'd have to have something to grow instead to make their money off of? All these discussions, Speaker Wilson said, are going to be a part of the next 10 to 20 years here in Utah. But he said it needs to start today. And he said expect in the upcoming legislative session a whole bunch, exact quote, a whole bunch of water-related bills, not all just dealing with the Great Salt Lake, but all dealing with the future of water in Utah. Check it out. The Utah House of Representatives is posting video clips portions of this event until its entirety is there on the Utah House Reps YouTube channel. They're slowly going through this 4-hour event and posting each segment independently as a 15-minute YouTube clip. I've linked to their overall page on our own Facebook page, and watch for those clips as they continue to appear there throughout the day and into the evening. Fascinating event, and glad it happened. We'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
Logan Dental Associates has been serving Cache Valley for over 20 years. They are excited to announce the addition of Dr. Brandon Preby, hygienist Emily Preby, and Dr. Curtis Taylor. Dr. Preby and Dr. Taylor will also continue to work at Cherry Creek Dental in Richmond. Now allow for increased hours and advanced services at Logan Dental Associates in Logan. Call and make your appointment with Dr. Brandon Preby or Dr. Curtis Taylor at Logan Dental Associates by calling 435-787-8207.
It's the winter weekend everyone loves, Bear Lake's Monster Winter Fest. January 21st through the 23rd. Go to bearlake.org for details on events plus hotel and lodging deals. Come up for a weekend of food and tons of fun as hundreds of people brave the icy cold waters of Bear Lake for the Monster Polar Plunge. There's a chili cook-off, cardboard boat regatta, fun run, and Cisco Disco fishing tournament. Go to bearlake.org for all the info and lodging specials. The Monster Winterfest, January 21st through the 23rd in Bear Lake.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. The Centers for Disease Control continues to tweak its COVID guidance. Why does it continue to find itself at the center of criticism from inside and outside the agency? Also, anxious to close on your new home? Be prepared to possibly do so without gutters, downspouts, and even garage doors. And attending the Super Bowl in L.A. using travel points and miles. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
When facing cancer, no one need be alone. Learn more at breakawayfromcancer.com.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Wrapping up hour one of today's show, but please stay tuned. Kicking off hour two with a look inside Crumble Cookies with the Cache Valley ties and a surprisingly short 5-year history. They've managed to turn into an internationally recognized cookie company. They're famous. You've seen them. You've tasted them. You've at least heard of them, if nothing else. And it is kind of an amazing story how this all began. They're also celebrating with some special limited cookies coming up. So we'll have details on that kicking off hour two of today's show. Our own Bill Walter sitting down with Lori of Crumble Cookies at 5:10 after the news. Wrapping up this hour, the legislative session, of course, underway for all intents and purposes. Doesn't officially kick off for 8 days, but we're getting an idea of what bills are out there, what lawmakers are planning. So far, nothing super controversial, but a survey, this grabbed a lot of eyeballs. A survey was sent out by Utah House Republicans over the weekend that was intended, I'm guessing, just for Republican delegates, maybe, or registered Republicans in various districts. And one of the questions on the survey caught everyone's eye. It was a question of whether or not the state should take a hand in local zoning laws to help deal with the housing crisis. That's huge. I mean, that sounds boring, I know, but that's huge if this happens. It was just a survey question, so reading a lot of tea leaves here. It may have just been trying to gauge approval or disapproval for the state doing so, and only that. But it may also be a sign that House leadership, Republicans in the majority there, might be considering such a measure. And this would be not a first in Utah, but considering the goals, it would probably be one of the largest state involvement efforts into zoning laws. Now, the state, of course, regulates all of this already. They tell cities and counties, you can do this, you can do that. Cities are able to zone for this. The state even helps define some of the zoning, but they leave a lot up to the cities. And I think that's good and has been good for a long time. Now we're faced with some issues here in Utah, issues of, a housing crisis, really. Houses, people being priced out of the housing market, families being priced out of the housing market because prices are so high. Those who can afford to get into the housing market can't find one a lot of times. Population expected to double over the next 40 years on top of this issue. So lawmakers have been paying a lot of attention to this for many years now. And the question at least hints at Utah Republicans wanting to get involved in how cities can and can't zone for housing. One of the ways that they would most likely get involved if state lawmakers were to do it, we've seen it bubble up in several cities here in Cache Valley already. Debates over different types of housing and where it can go. The state could step in and say, nah, cities, you have to have 30% high-density housing, and we're going to define that this way. That's just a hypothetical example, but check it out. I've posted a screenshot of the question in the survey that was sent out over the weekend to our Facebook page, and we'll see if this pops up in the legislative session. Hour 2, and a look inside the success story of Crumble Cookies, which they're celebrating with some limited edition cookies this week. We've got the details in Hour 2 of today's show right after this here on KVNU Logan.